Have you been plagued by nightmares every time you sleep? Did the ghost hunter you hired suggest therapy instead? If so, it seems you have been visited by the Garden of Recollection. And the only way to stop this is by doing what the Memo Keeper wants. That is, surviving the memory of chaos. Hi Nameless, sorry for dropping in unannounced. If you're seeing this hologram, congratulations! You have been chosen to attend a special seminar on how to survive the memory of chaos. Been thrashing around in your sleep? Suffering from sleep paralysis on a daily basis? Don't worry Nameless, this seminar will teach you everything you need to know to keep those pesky memo keepers happy. There is an old saying, Nameless. One floor a day keeps the memo keeper away. While the source is a questionable or extensive research found the quote surprisingly accurate. So without further ado, let's start our seminar with I'm going to make a lot of gaming analogies here. Therefore, let's call the memory of chaos as endgame content. As the name suggests, it's only accessible once you've reached the highest level. Technically, you can access them once the memo keeper approaches you, but accessible is such a tricky word. The Garden of Recollection takes your past enemies and cranks them up way beyond your first encounter, so they can accurately compile those memory fragments. Think of it as overclocking your nightmares. Now, if you happen to have a new player aboard the Astral Express, or maybe you are that new player yourself, then my advice is very simple. You'll have to endure the nightmares a little longer. As you might already know, progress can feel slow at the start of your career. To fully prepare anyone for endgame content, it typically takes about 3 to 5 months to reach the final stage of the game. So for now, you can take it easy by only clearing the earlier floors and grab those sweet stellar jades. And if the memo keeper snagging gets too annoying, try doing some yoga before going to bed. Might not help, but hey, it's worth a shot. There are 3 types of players based on my observations: the casual, the hardcore, and the casual hardcore. The casual follows one simple philosophy. Games are meant to be fun, not stressed. They love immersing themselves in the story. Some even have character AI accounts to deepen the immersion. They will pull for characters purely based on personal preferences and couldn't care less about grinding or meta discussions. The hardcore are all about min-maxing their accounts. Every banner is scrutinized, every pull is strategic, and every character must pass the meta stamp of approval. They often invest heavily in Eidolons, Lycons, and team optimizations. Some are so hardcore they basically fund the IPC's marketing department single-handedly. The casual hardcore is the hybrid between two worlds. They enjoy the narrative like a casual, but aren't afraid to sweat a little for those endgame rewards. When it comes to hard content, the casual hardcore aim for good enough and call it a day. Now that we've covered these 3 archetypes, let's introduce some mutations to the equation. Free to play, low spender, dolphin, and whale. Explaining these mutations will take all day, and we don't have that kind of time. So I'm just going to slap it on the screen for you, Nameless. You can pause the hologram, take a look, and move on to the next segment when you're ready. Oh yeah, I need to address this before we move on. If you are a casual, Memory of Chaos is probably going to feel like a constant sleep paralysis. But don't worry, Nameless, I have tons of casual friends who can clear floor 7 and 8 If you want to go further than that though, you'll need to evolve into a casual hardcore. Casual hardcore are still casual, they just occasionally dive into min-maxing, farming relics more actively, and making smarter pulls. As a casual hardcore myself, my pulling decisions are guided entirely by divine intervention. I was pulling for Yaoqiu's Lycon. Was it for Yaoqiu? No. But I lost the 75% chance and got Bronya's Lycon instead. I took it as a sign to finally fix Bronya. So I did. After wasting ton of resources only for the IPC marketing development department to drop 2 new banners, one featuring buffed out Bronya. And that's when I realized the Lycon wasn't for her. It was for Mr. Holiday. So now I have him. Does that mean I'll pull for Aglea next? No. The Wisdom Walker has been visiting me every night, Nameless. They warn me, if I don't secure at least one limited 5-star erudition, my luck will be cursed forever. So I pulled for their Emanator in the first 10 pulls, with her signature Lycon. Do I regret this decision? Not really. Her ultimate is amazing, and I love her sassy attitude.
Still as hopeless as ever.
When I was building my babushka, Jade came home. It seems I went a little overboard trying to break the curse, which inadvertently transferring my curse to the other side. Now, I guess my Sunday is going to be permanently paired in Akron's team. The reason why I didn't pull for Aglea is simply because I don't have enough ticket, Nameless. And I'm going to skip everyone until the gold arrives. So, now you know why. Oh my god, what is this placement? Hold on, Nameless. Before we talk about this topic, we need to understand the meaning of power creep. Let me consult the Interstellar Peace Network real quick. Here we go. It says here, power creep is a term used to describe when new content in a game becomes more powerful than older content, making the older content less useful. At first glance, the issue seems obvious, right? Older characters get overshadowed by newer ones. But if you take a closer look, you'll see that some older units can still clear new content, just not as efficiently as they did when they first launched. Plenty of players out there showcasing their older characters and still outperform my teams. Though to be fair, that might just be a skill issue on my part. Their teams often run 0 Eidolons and maybe 1 signature Lycon at most. So, does power creep exist? The short answer is yes, power creep exists. The long answer? Well, power creep becomes a serious issue only when new content becomes downright impossible for older characters to clear, and this is not exactly the case. If many players can still clear new content using older characters, then power creep isn't exactly that problematic. Sure, it's harder and more frustrating at times, but what is endgames without a bit of challenge? While there have been talk to fix this, I don't see it happening anytime soon. My best guess is maybe 5 patches from now. Whether it's a soft overhaul, a relic rebalance, or new team compositions, all we can do is hope it helps mitigate the power creep. Hi Nameless, this is Hyson from the future. After borrowing a time travel machine from a friend, I realized that my previous claim was not entirely accurate, at least for the current timeline. The Forgotten Hall in version 3.0 is more restrictive than past versions, making it quite challenging for a lot of players. Unless you have 2 strong team setups that count as long-term investments, this will be very difficult. Well, at least for the non-hardcore players. From my early observations, power creep has existed for a long time, but it used to affect only a small number of players. However, since the issue was never addressed, it has slowly affecting more and more players over time. Now with version 3.0, Forgotten Hall has reached a point where almost everyone is affected by power creep due to the strict enemy placements on both sides. The first side requires an AoE or splash damage dealer, and the other side needs the same requirement. This can be frustrating for players who don't have two teams with similar archetypes for both sides. That is why I now believe the only way to reduce power creep is to either improve almost all of version 1 characters so they can match the strength of newer ones, or further balance the less sweat enemy placements, or both. If the old characters aren't as strong as the new ones, who would want to pull for them? Whether their solution will meet players' expectations, we can only wait and see until they reveal it. As you already know, everyone in the vast cosmos are at the whims of RNG. You cannot predict whether you'll get the character you want, or be stuck in the why my insert character looks different. Trust me, Nameless, I've been there before. Probably you too. While you cannot control your luck, you can minimize its impact by planning smarter pulls. Let's talk about team progression pulls, specifically two main approaches: horizontal and vertical. Horizontal progression means spreading your pools to diversify your team compositions. By doing so, you create a variety of archetypes that you can swap in and out depending on the memory turbulences or enemy weaknesses, just like a multi-tool pocket knife for every occasion. Vertical progression is all about doubling down on what you already have. You focus on strengthening your current team by aiming for their Eidolons or signature icons. This makes your core team ridiculously strong, which enable you to brute force any challenge thrown your way. Fortunately, both approaches work for tackling any endgame content. Whether you choose varied approach or focus approach, the destination is the same: success. As for me personally, I like having a vast roster of team composition that I can swap in and out before finally strengthening them with their signature icon during their rerun. So if you're a new player, go horizontal first and only go to vertical once you found the team you like. Another thing to consider is how to choose between Eidolons and signature icons. Based on my experience, if you're fully committing to a DPS character, the best choice is to pull for their signature icon instead of their Eidolons. The reason is simple: DPS signature icons provide a bigger boost in damage than their early Eidolons. Most DPS characters' first Eidolon offers only a small upgrade, while their second Eidolon is often too expensive to get, unless you're lucky of course. Support and sustain characters, however, benefit more from early Eidolons than signature icons.
Know your place, trash!
Unlike DPS, their first Eidolon usually provides better value than their icon. On top of that, support and sustain characters have plenty of good 4-star options except for Lady Fushwan. Her icon is more valuable for sustaining than her first Eidolon. Plus, she doesn't have any real substitute with HP-related stats on that department. And at this point, Texture of Memories is probably just a meme icon. If you're pulling for signature icon, Superimpose 1 is already enough. If you happen to get an extra copy of any 5-star icon, always keep at least one copy for another character who might benefit from them. At the end of the day, it's your choice, Nameless. If you think a signature icon is amazing and don't have good substitute, then go for it. Well, I'll be frank with you, Nameless. If you're struggling on floor 7 or 8, you might want to go back to the drawing board and fix your team. Perhaps your relics isn't decent enough, or perhaps you haven't unlocked their talents just yet. Even with everyone using 4-star icons, floor 7, 8, 9, and 10 is still easy for me. Floor 11 and 12 is where the challenge has begun. Say you're unsure on how to build a character or a team. Don't worry, Nameless. The IPC has your back with their built-in game tools. All you have to do is to open your smartphone, Scroll down to Game Tools and compare your character builds with players across the cosmos. Or if you're lazy like me, just click Build Guide at the top right corner of your character screen. The IPC Analytic department will help you with recommended relics, recommended stats, and icons for all your characters. Oh, another tips from me is not to care about whether your sphere is elemental damage bonus or attack percentage. From what I've seen, they've both the same Nameless, so if your attack percentage has better substats, use that one. But seriously Nameless, fix those relics and team composition if you haven't done it yet. Even if you're using substitute icons and have 0 Eidolons, knowledge and skill are your true assets. If you've got those, you can still clear floor 12 with 5 cycles on each plane, which in the end let you 3-star the floor. To avoid unnecessary stress, if you fail to hit the 5 cycles threshold on the first plane, take a step back and go back to the drawing board. Maybe RNG was a bit unpredictable on that run. Perhaps prioritizing different enemies could have worked better. Or maybe you fumbled the ultimate timing. If an important character gets disabled at the beginning, just restart the fight. The Garden of Recollection is surprisingly forgiving when it comes to mistakes during the middle part. Just make sure that you don't make too many mistakes in the first plane. And if you're feeling confident, you can choose to move past the safe threshold, but be warned. If the first plane is too tough for you, the second one is likely to be just as bad or even worse. So do not underestimate difficulties by Nameless unless you're confident with your second team. Speed tuning is key in Memory of Chaos Nameless. Action value is a bit complicated to explain, and even I rarely focus on it. The main takeaway is, action value is a redundant knowledge in high-level Memory of Chaos. Why? It's simply because action value always reset when reaching the next wave. What you should be focusing on is just mainly speed stats. From what I've seen, 134 speed is almost a must. Moving twice in one cycle is way better than stacking more attack percentage on your boots. So how do you tune your team speeds properly? Aside from praying to your preferred Eon, you need to figure out effective team rotations, Nameless. Who should go first and who should be the slowest? However, there are exceptions. For example, if your main DPS is solely focusing on damage, you can skip speed stats and substats entirely. Another exception is when you have advanced forward supports in that team composition. Bronya, Sparkle, Robin, Sunday, and Remembrance MC can make sure your DPS keeps up with the momentum. You might think Sustainer doesn't need that extra speed, but that's actually wrong. If your support and Sustainer can keep up with your DPS's momentum, they can balance the skill points economy and make your DPS life a little easier. So always speed tune your team to survive the highest level of Memory of Chaos. Understanding how to utilize your team is a good start, but to truly dominate the battlefield, you need to understand your enemies. In turn-based combat, you always need to plan ahead to maximize the potential of each turn you make, which is similar to Celestial Jade. One of my go-to strategies is high priority target. Knowing which enemies can cost you the biggest headache is crucial. Take them down first, whether by breaking their shields, delaying their action value, or taking them out very early. So for example, we have the Disabler. The Disablers are the most annoying type of enemies because they can disable your entire team. You have two choices here, Nameless. Focus on them first or hope the RNG is on your side. You can sometimes ignore them if you have effect resistant buffs or characters that can negate debuffs. Cleansing debuffs can help too, but the disabled characters will still have their action values reduced. Then we have the Debuffer. Debuffers aren't as bad as Disablers, but they can still cause significant trouble if you left them unchecked. They'll inflict debuffs like damage over time, energy reduction, or health reduction. While non-elite debuffers are easy to handle, elites require more effort to take down. Up next is the tanker. Tankers aren't heavy hitters, but they can take a lot of damage before going down. Some tankers require their shield to be broken before you can deal any damage, while others summon minions that can heal or buff them. Finally, we have the Summoner. Summoners are interesting because their summoned creatures can either help or hinder your team. Since the summons themselves usually deal low damage, the best strategy is to focus on taking out the summoner rather than the summoned creatures. If you have a strong sustain character, let the summons attack your team as their attacks will generate your ultimates much faster. For a Swarm through staying, it's actually different. Destroying its summons will inflict stackable vulnerability debuff on all hostile creatures. For more consistency, use Splash or AoE DPS to spread out the damage to the sting summons. While your success depends on RNG, your enemies are still predictable. Take Svarog for example. He always uses boost deployment on his second turn. You can counter this by saving your ultimate until his robot arm is on the field. Well, at least that's how it works for me. I could go on for hours, but the short version is, every boss in Memory of Chaos follows the same attack pattern, and the only way to counter them is by learning their attack patterns and pick the right team for the job. That is why the Intelligentsia Guild will help analyze every elites and bosses you'll face from floor 9 to floor 12. This monthly program aims to help anyone struggling with sleep paralysis so that they can finally get a good night rest. So stay tuned. And that's all right, Nameless. I've covered everything I can think of so that you can survive the Memory of Chaos. If I remember something else, I will add it in the second part, probably. If you have any questions or opinions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to respond. Also, don't forget to subscribe, Nameless. It's just a simple click, but that click helps the channel's growth and is greatly appreciated by me. Like the video too if you've been enjoying the content. Well, until next time, Nameless. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and I'll see you later.